Prosecutor investigating former President Trump's efforts to overturn the state's 2020 election results say more subpoenas, more of them than the ones we already know about, may be coming. Multiple Trump allies, including Rudy Giuliani and Senator Lindsey Graham, were subpoenaed on Tuesday. In an exclusive interview with NBC News, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis weighed in on the election probe.
Well, I'm not going to get into the details of the investigation, but this is what I will tell you. Election interference is a very important subject. We have been granted a special purpose grand jury by the judges here. I think it's an important investigation, and what is important is that the grand jurors hear from anyone that may have impacted this election.
Could we expect to possibly see additional subpoenas from people in former President Trump's inner circle or Trump associates?
Yes.
Are we talking about family members? Are we talking about former White House officials?
I mean, we'll just have to see where the investigation leads us. But I think that people thought that we came into this as some kind of game. This is not a game at all. What I am doing is very serious. It's very important work. And we're going to do our due diligence in making sure that we look at all aspects of the case. And so all you see is a prosecutor doing their due diligence.
Might we see a subpoena of the former president himself?
Anything is possible.
Wow. Senator Lindsey Graham's lawyer says he plans to challenge the subpoena he received from the special grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia. The attorneys write in a statement, quote, "This is all politics."
No, actually, it's not.
Fulton County is engaged in a fishing expedition.
No, we get you. We get you.
And working in concert with the January 6th committee in Washington. Any information from an interview or deposition with Senator Graham would immediately be shared with the January 6th committee.
Yeah, there's nothing right about that statement if you look at it. This is all politics. It's not all politics. You have a Republican Secretary of State who voted for Donald Trump, who said Lindsey Graham called, and he believed Lindsey Graham was trying to pressure him to throw out ballots that were legally cast. So, no, it's not all politics. Lindsey's a lawyer. He knows he's in hot water. We got Donald Trump on a recording with the Secretary of State of the state of Georgia, saying, find me one more vote. This should be easy. Find me one more vote in Georgia than I lost by. I just need those votes. You can do it. It's not hard. So, no, I think they got Donald Trump and Lindsey dead to center. The question is...
Listen, there's cult following and people who will allow anything, who don't care. Then there's the law.
Yeah, I mean, the law's the law. Maura, you know what's so fascinating is we've got, of course, everybody talking about the Department of Justice. We need the Department of Justice to step in. We need Merrick Garland to step in and do something. You have people saying the same about Congress. Congress needs to make Donald Trump accountable. Well, it looks right now like it's the Fulton County DA that is actually going to hold the former president accountable and get to the bottom of this scheme. I say, get to the bottom of the scheme. We don't need to find a secret taping system. Trump called and got recorded by the Secretary of State there trying to steal the election.
It's kind of thrilling, isn't it, to see the gears of justice finally start to turn.
Gears of justice, yeah.
It's pretty thrilling. The other thing that's interesting about it is, you know, it may not be Donald Trump's actions as he tried to direct the Secret Service car toward the mob so he could join it that ultimately leads to his being held accountable, potentially, but rather a call, which was, of course, no less egregious, but yet a simple call to a fellow Republican in a lowly state, you know, far away from Washington, D.C. And, you know, when you talk to prosecutors who build cases, it's those little things that get you. You know, when you are a journalist, it's those things that kind of surprise you, that come out of left field. that ultimately really make the difference. And I think what's really, heartening here is that the system in Georgia seems to be working just right. Public officials from day one did exactly what they needed to do. They recorded that call. They served the public and, their oath that they took. And now you see the Fulton County prosecutor certainly not pursuing political charges, but doing her job in the face of what is enormous intimidation. And we know that because of what other witnesses have testified during the January 6th committee. These witnesses are under enormous amount of pressure. And I think local officials as well, we should not discount that. They're doing their job in the face of a campaign of intimidation that includes the right-wing media and the former president of the United States.
And Joe, a good question for Lindsey Graham is why was he calling the Secretary of State of Georgia at all? He's a senator from the state of South Carolina. His office says it's because he's the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, just keeping tabs on the vote counts in several states. But are you really going to call into question the integrity of Brad Raffensperger, a Republican who supported Donald Trump up until this moment when Donald Trump put his thumb on the scale and tried to get the election flipped, who recorded these phone calls, and everything he has claimed has come out to be true? And he says, when Lindsey Graham called, Raffensperger says, I felt like I was being pressured to throw out absentee ballots that were cast legally. So if he wants to make it his word against Raffensperger, that's a tough fight for Lindsey Graham.
Very tough fight, and it's a tough battle because, again, you've got a Georgia Secretary of State who voted for Donald Trump, who had always supported Donald Trump, just wouldn't go along with helping Donald Trump steal the election. Donald Trump was placing phone calls to the Secretary of State saying, help me steal the election. And about that same time, Lindsey Graham's calling, and the Secretary of State saying this, not the New York Times editorial page, not the New Yorker, not NPR, but the Republican Secretary of State who voted for Trump said, he was calling me, pressuring me to throw out votes. So, I mean, Walter, Marta brings up a great point. Up and down the line, people did a lot of things right here. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, I'm always in the minority. I just am when it comes to public opinion, I guess. You know me. Unfortunately, and yet for a long time. But everybody on 4th of July, you look on Twitter, and I'm like, ugh, I cannot celebrate 4th of July this year. This is And I was just thinking of Trumpers who were going before the January 6th committee. And it took too long. I'll be the first to say that. It took too, but guess what? They got there. And on the January 6th commission, you have one Trumper after another Trumper after another Trumper actually calling it out and making it possible for Donald Trump to be brought to justice. Secretary of State of Georgia, again, here's a guy, again, was a Trumper. It was against his political interest to record Donald Trump's phone call. It was against his political interest. Everybody said that politically he was a dead man walking. The same with Kemp, who, again, was all in with Donald Trump. But when it came to stealing an election, he didn't go for it. And you could look at the county commissioners out in Arizona, in Maricopa County. I mean, they acted honorably time and time and time again. You could talk. Rusty, again, said he'd still vote for Donald Trump. That is just beyond bizarre. But he refused to rig the election when Trump asked him to rig the election. You can talk about the people who were counting votes and were supposed to certify up in Michigan, the Republicans, whose careers are probably over. You can talk about Liz Cheney. I mean, and you can talk about the court. I know a lot of people very angry about the abortion ruling and the gun ruling. But 63 federal judges said, no, we're not going along with it. This same 6-3 Donald Trump court said no. They didn't even crack the door open. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I wish I thought that was something to celebrate on on July the 4th, because for all of our failings, and we have a lot, the system held when we needed it to hold the most.
Yeah, on July 4th, you can celebrate democracy, all the things you said. You can add Mike Pence to the list. but it was pretty close. And I think we have to always remember we can't just sit back and celebrate. We have to be part of a process where we understand the rule of law. I was reading Tim Miller's book, Why We Did It, and there are just so many of them. Lindsey Graham is just devastated in that book because there were so many who didn't go along. So I think we have to celebrate those who made sure the system worked. The people who were like, Dwight Eisenhower back in the McCarthy era in the 50s. But we also have to say we're going to keep pressure on it. We're going to ask people, why aren't you standing up? Why are you being a collaborationist? And you compare it. I love what Willie said about Britain. I mean, Britain, whatever you may think of Boris Johnson, and he was hypocritical and disingenuous and misleading, but what happened here was a different order of magnitude. I mean, this is a guy trying to overthrow a democracy, not just lie about having had parties at 10 Downing Street. Speaking of which, it's Larry the Cat. People on Twitter have been, including Larry the Cat,
really
has been telling me it's
Twitter.
Larry, not Barry.
Yeah.
And man,
Wait,
I follow
I thought
Larry.
it was Barry.
Our social media correspondent, Walter Isaacson. We're going to come back to the UK and London.